Feel the pressure of a stranger's palm against yours, the specific grip, the firmness of the clasp, the pump of the arm, once, twice, maybe 3 times, before you both let go and pretend it was nothing. You've done this thousands of times without thinking about it. But 4 years ago, some of the most serious public health officials on Earth looked at that gesture and said, "It's over, retire it, it's too dangerous, too intimate, and we have better options." Dr. Anthony Fauci said flatly he hoped it would not come back. The elbow bump was promoted, the fist bump, the simple nod. The handshake survived anyway. And understanding why it survived, why nothing could kill it, means going all the way back to the reason it exists in the first place. Today, we're uncovering the true origin of the handshake, how a weapons inspection became the most universal social gesture on Earth, and why the money, law, and physics of centuries made it essentially indestructible. To understand the handshake, we first have to look at what happened before it. Early medieval Europe was not a safe place to travel. That is a staggering understatement. There were no nation-states in any modern sense. No neutral ground, no courts you could appeal to if a stranger decided you looked worth robbing. If you were a merchant, a traveler, a knight moving through unfamiliar territory, every person you encountered on a narrow road represented a genuine, immediate threat, and you represented one to them. The dominant weapon of personal violence at the time was not a sword. Swords were expensive, conspicuous, and hard to conceal. The weapon most commonly carried was a dagger. And daggers had a quality that made them socially terrifying. They could be hidden in a sleeve. This wasn't paranoia. It was just the geometry of violence. So what do you do when a stranger rounds the bend ahead of you? You need a way to signal, instantly, wordlessly, mutually, that you are not about to kill each other. Enter the right hand. Extending your right hand, palm open, was the simplest proof available. I am not holding a weapon right now. But that wasn't enough on its own. A blade could still be tucked up a sleeve, ready to drop into the palm once you'd assessed the threat and found it manageable. So the clasp was followed by a shake, a rhythmic, firm up and down motion, specifically designed to dislodge anything hidden between the wrist and the elbow. Think about what you're doing the next time you shake someone's hand at a job interview. You are performing a weapons check, and here's where it gets strange. Because most people told this story, assume it began in the medieval period, a dark age habit from dangerous roads that we somehow never shook. But that's wrong by a very long way. The handshake appears in Homer's Iliad, written down around the 8th century BC, describing events Greeks believed to be even older. It appears in Athenian funerary art, carved in stone, showing figures clasping right hands as a final act of farewell and binding agreement. Ancient Mesopotamian reliefs show kings sealing alliances with the gesture. This thing you did this morning, possibly before you'd finished your first coffee, is at least 2,500 years old. The Roman Empire rose and fell, and the handshake was already ancient. So why did it survive that long? Why not a bow, a nod, a verbal phrase, a dozen other possible signals? The common answer is that humans are naturally social. We evolved to bond through touch, and the handshake emerged organically as a symbol of peaceful intent. Anthropologists point out that offering your palm, the softer, less armored side of the hand, is a gesture of physical openness. In the body's own language, it reads as a kind of submission. That's true. But it doesn't explain the shake itself. If it's just about warmth and connection, why not simply press palms and hold? Why the vigorous vertical motion that has persisted in boardrooms and diplomatic summits where nobody has worn a sleeve-hidden dagger for 5 centuries? But if that's true, why don't we just hold hands? Here's how the mechanism actually worked and why the motion was never ornamental. Think of the handshake like a lock and key. The palm extension is the key being produced, proof of identity, proof of peaceful intent. But the shake is the tumblers turning, confirming the lock is genuine and not a replica. In other words, the motion was functional before it was social. A single clasp could be faked. You could show an empty right hand while your left was already moving. A sustained grip with rhythmic motion, nearly impossible to maintain while also reaching for a concealed weapon. The shake was a physical constraint, a tiny engineered safety mechanism built directly into the greeting. By the time of medieval merchant guilds, this gesture had migrated from dangerous roads into the marketplace. Traders adopted it as a binding confirmation of a verbal contract. No paper, no notary, no witness required. A handshake was the transaction itself. And this is where the legal architecture starts to get genuinely interesting. Germanic and Norse legal traditions, which shaped much of Northern European common law, treated certain physical acts as legally binding utterances. Shaking on a deal wasn't symbolic. In some jurisdictions, it was enforceable. You had given your word, embodied in the grip of your right hand. But here is where it gets complicated. For most of this history, the handshake was a gesture between men. Specifically, men with weapons, property, and legal standing to enter into contracts. Women were broadly excluded from it, not because the gesture wasn't available to them, but because they weren't recognized as parties who could make binding agreements in the first place. Their formal entry into the handshake in Western professional culture came surprisingly late, tied directly to their entry into commerce and law. Then the Quakers changed everything. In the 17th century, Quakers rejected bowing and hat tipping as performances of false social hierarchy. They adopted the handshake as their universal greeting, the same gesture for everyone, regardless of rank. Radical egalitarianism, encoded in palm and grip. When Quaker merchants became prominent in British and American trade, they carried that credibility into commercial law. A Quaker shaking on a deal was, in the eyes of their community, giving a sacred oath. And because Quaker merchants were broadly trusted, their customs were broadly copied. But why did the right hand specifically survive and stay across all of this? In behavioral economics, there is a concept called the costly signal. A costly signal is an action that is hard to fake because it requires you to genuinely surrender something. Saying, "I trust you," costs nothing. Anyone can say it. But handing your dominant arm, your sword arm, your weapon arm to a stranger for 5 full seconds, that costs something real. By committing your right hand to a grip, you are physically disadvantaging yourself for violence. For the duration of the clasp, you are, by your own choice, disarmed. You have staked your strongest asset on the interaction going peacefully. Merchants understood this intuitively long before economists had the vocabulary to describe it. A man who shakes with his right hand is not just being friendly. He is making himself vulnerable, deliberately, as proof that vulnerability is safe. And counterintuitively, that is the precise foundation of trust. The handshake didn't persist because it felt warm. It persisted because it was honest. Because it was costly to fake. Because it was physically verifiable in a way that words never could be. And because, over 8 centuries, it accumulated enough legal and commercial weight that removing it would have required dismantling frameworks running through employment law, property transactions, and civil court precedent across dozens of countries. Fauci was right that it spreads germs. He was wrong that it could simply be retired. You cannot retire infrastructure. Next time someone extends a hand toward you, don't see a pleasantry. See a 2,500-year-old weapons inspection that became a verbal contract, that became a legal instrument, that became the single most recognized signal of human agreement on Earth. A gesture born in the fear of daggers now closes billion-dollar acquisitions. It has outlasted the Roman Empire, the Black Death, feudalism, 2 world wars, and a global pandemic. It survived because it was, from the very beginning, doing something deeply honest, and humans, it turns out, are very good at recognizing honesty, even when they can't explain why. If you enjoy seeing the hidden logic behind everyday things, hit like and subscribe for more. After all, you already know how to seal the deal.